Hello learners, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the second video of second chapter in geography of 7th standard. Today we will see what are the solar eclipse, what are the total solar eclipse, what are the partial solar eclipse and what is the annual solar eclipse. First let us understand the information, what it means. If the moon is between the sun and the earth, the shadow of the moon falls on the earth. If the moon is between the sun, if the sun is between the moon, the shadow of the earth is falling on that moon. That will cover, that will hide actually. At such a time, these three celestial objects are on the same plane and fall in one line. So these are on the same planes and that is falling on the moon at a one line. Hence the place on the earth where the moon shadow falls experience a solar eclipse. So when this shadow falls on the moon between the sun, that eclipse we call as a solar eclipse. It is a shadow of the moon actually falls on the sun, that is called solar eclipse. This shadow is of two types, the central position of the shadow and is darker and the periphery is light. So this is having a central position of that shadow, it is a darker and the periphery is on light. In the area of dark shadow on the earth, the sun becomes completely invisible. If we can't see the sun, if that becomes invisible, that shadow we call as a total solar eclipse. If we can't see the sun, that becomes invisible, so it is called total solar eclipse. However, during same period, at the places where the shadow is lighter, the sun disk appear partially covered. This condition is described as partial and solar eclipse. If we cannot see sun or the shadow is covered by the sun, that we call as a partial and solar eclipse. See figure 2.5. Total solar eclipse is seen in a very limited region of the earth. Now we will see the diagram and we can understand what actually this explanation is all about. Now students, understand what actually that information is all about. Now you can see that this is the earth and this is the sun. You can see the moon also here, but this moon is actually having only half part of its color. Why? Because the shadow is not falling directly on the moon. So that is the difference between moon and the earth, but the sun actually is having a light over here. So why the partial solar eclipse called? Because you can see the moon is having a half dark and half light, so it is called partial solar eclipse. And here you can see the moon is fully covered, we can't see the moon properly, so that we call as a total solar eclipse. And this diagram is called a total and partial solar eclipse. Now move to the second diagram, that is 2.6, annular and partial solar eclipse. What actually annular solar eclipse is called? Eclipse means when the fully dark shadow is there, there is no light, there is no sunlight, nothing is there and fully covered with the darkness, so that is called a annular solar eclipse. Here also the same thing apply over here. Partial solar eclipse, half is dark and half is brighter, or we can say as a lighter. So here it is also having a solar eclipse. Why? That sunlight is not falling directly on the moon, so it is not covered, half only covered and half it is lighter, so we call as a partial solar eclipse. So this is the information of two diagrams, so you just have to draw in the notebook this diagram and understand. Sometimes the moon is in apogee position. This means it is at the farthest from the earth. So sometimes the moon is also in the apogee. As I have told you, what do you mean by apogee? Apogee is the closest and perigee means it is a farthest. Sorry students, apogee means it is the farthest from the earth is called apogee, and when the moon is afar from the sun, that is called closest of the perigee. So these are two difference you will see. This means it is the farthest from the earth. As a result, the deep shadow of the moon is cast in space, does not reach the earth. So the space or the shadow is falling on the earth, that doesn't move to the earth. So you can imagine on this diagram also the moon, the shadow is not reaching to the earth actually. So here it is stopping over here. Form a very small region of the earth. Only a illuminated edge of the sun disk is seen in the form of ring. So we can see as a form of ring actually. This is called annular eclipse. So you can see this ring in the diagram, it is shown, it is kind of a ring actually we called. In figure 2.6, annular eclipse is a rare phenomenon. So it is a rare phenomenon. We can't see anything, but it is a rare phenomenon of that circle. Now, what is lunar eclipse? A lunar eclipse occurs when the moon enters the shadow of the earth. So what lunar eclipse is called? When the shadow enter into the earth, that is called lunar eclipse. While revolving around it, at this time, it is necessary that the earth is between the sun and the moon, and all three of them are in the same plane. So they are rotating and they are in the same plane. As I have discussed in the diagram also, that these are at the same plane. On a full moon day, the moon path of revolution passes through the thick shadow of the earth. If the moon is totally hidden within the shadow, we see a total lunar eclipse. If we can't see the earth, or we can't see the moon actually, and it is hidden with the shadow of the some of the things of eclipse, so that eclipse we call as a total lunar eclipse. And if only a part of the moon is in the shadow, we see a partial lunar eclipse, as I have explained you in that diagram. So you can understand by following that diagram. So this diagram is also given over here on page number 6. You can understand that sun is also having a light, but you can see on this diagram also the earth is covered only half part, and over here the moon and total of lunar eclipse, it is covered with a shadow, and these two shadows, or the earth is not fully covered, we call a total lunar eclipse and partial lunar eclipse.